All right, it looks like we're ready to get started. This is what is this, April 27th Rules and Public Policy Committee meeting. It looks like all members are in attendance, all members of the committee, that is. Ari Hall is also here. Mr. Mosby is here. I don't know, did everyone get a chance to take a look at the agenda? Not that it's too critical at this point. One of the main things that we're going to need to do first would be to review the previous minutes. Does everybody have a copy handy to look at? Those that were in attendance, do you see anything that needs to be addressed? Look okay to you, Matt? All right, so we will, I'll get those submitted to the clerk for publishing, if we will, notifying, or whatever needs to be done with them. Next on the agenda, unfinished. I will say this, as it pertains to the previous minutes, we did not mention the December 2019 minutes. You know, there was some discussion about the minutes from the previous committee. And then there were a couple of months in there that we didn't have any record of those minutes or any record at all of a meeting. We did not, to the best of my knowledge and from what I've seen or reviewed, there's nothing about a December meeting either. So I'm going to also take, I'll make a sheet of paper that just says there was no meeting held, and then we'll go ahead and I'll get that to clerk so that it can be posted also. But that was the only other thing that was not really talked about, was the December meeting from the previous committee. Unfinished or old business, the charter hard copy. We kind of talked about that, and we eventually went ahead and brought it to the council floor, if everyone remembers. And I think we were actually still waiting to get some clarification on the verbiage of maybe the 305 changes and then potentially the 10.02 changes. Mr. Mosby, I know at one point you were going to try to consider checking with the Board of Election, and I know there was some discussion about clarifying some things with Mr. Dieters. Any update on that, Ron?
Yes, when I went to the Board of Elections, the Board of Elections would only have the ballot language that was actually placed on the ballot, not so much the language that should be put into the charter. So, and of course, the reason why is because of how you pointed out before, that in the updated charter, it was in there as a form of a question, because that's how it has to be placed on the ballot.
Right.
So we would have to get some kind of interpretation, I believe, from Mr. Dieters as to, you know, how it should be worded to go into the charter.
Okay. Matt, I know you had, and I don't remember the terminology or whatever that you used, but there was, I guess, maybe the resolution that council would have approved maybe to submit to the Board of Elections, and that would have had, I don't know if we want to call that like an attachment or an appendix or something like that. Do you recall how that is? Maybe that's what we need to be actually using.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I thought I forwarded you the email that the but the Charter Review Commission specifically had the specific language that rewrote and redlined section 305 and was sent on to Mr. Dieters, and that's what he used and repackaged to turn into the resolution. So whatever was in that red line paragraph, which I thought I forwarded it to you, right?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely
Once
have
upon a
that.
time, I think it's been like 2 months now or something, because we
Right.
didn't have a meeting last month, but whatever that was, I forwarded to you was ultimately what Mr. Dieters repackaged and used for the resolution.
Right. So I guess then the question is, is that what we can legally put in there, even though it's, what's put on the ballot is a question, of course. And then are we able to go back to 10.02 and do the same thing and clean that up without any additional issues?
Well, I certainly think that's most likely what we would do with the most recent charter amendment, because that was the language that the commission itself approved according to its duties, and that was the language that was on the resolution that was passed. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's what we could do for now. Regarding that really stale section of the charter, I don't know, I mean, that's weird. I mean, that's a long time running. I would assume so, because like the law is what the law is. If it's not recorded right in some book or something like that, it doesn't change what the law actually was. So technically the law is whatever the law is and was supposed to be. So I don't think a typo changes the law, right? Laws have to be passed either by ballot or resolution or ordinance or whatever. So just because somebody missed a period when they wrote it down in a glossy book doesn't mean that it changes the actual law and what it's supposed to be. So my gut says that it can be changed because that's what it actually is, not what it says.
And really, it should come probably right from the piece of legislation.
I think that's the case. I mean, because if you look, the ballot does have a question, but on the top of a charter review ballot, it actually has the new language usually, and then there's a question. So
yeah, I don't think this one was written quite like that.
But I think it's whatever the Charter Review Commission, whatever language they approve and submit to the council, and whatever is included on that resolution is the language that I think is proper for the charter itself.
Okay. All right. Well, that language, if you all recall, is what was put in the most recent version of the hard copy charter that I created and handed out so everyone could look at. And we were just kind of waiting to see if we need to make any other changes. But I guess, again, I can bring it up at the next council meeting, and then hopefully we can go ahead and agree to use that document as the hard copy version of the charter that can be made available to the public. By the way, the Amera law, or wherever this stuff is actually posted online, still has not been updated with the new section 305. And I'm not sure what we have to do, if we can make a special submission to them to update it, or if we have to wait for one of those times periodically throughout the year where we ask them to update the codified ordinances. I just don't know.
I think Mr. Dieters actually has a contact with him, so he can probably follow up with that. You just have to probably reach out to him to do that.
Okay. Okay, now next on the
Mr. Chair, just before you begin,
Yes,
you had mentioned the charter itself, and I was going to point out that unfortunately we don't have any updated versions of the charter available. The only copies that I have are the glossies that Mr. Miller Novak was referring to. So we actually do need more recent copies of the charter.
yeah, and I'll, like I said, I'll go ahead and bring that up again at the next council meeting. since it's already been brought to the floor, I guess it hasn't really hung on to the old business area of the agenda. And we need to talk about what the next steps are and if we're all going to approve or agree to, in whatever fashion, agree to that version being the copy that will be, or the version that will be used for the official hard copy. But Mr. Mosby, you had mentioned to me earlier about some potential concerns or changes maybe to a future charter revision or something. I know one was, go ahead.
No, thank you. I was just pointing out that as I was going through the charter myself, as we were trying to actually put together our organizational chart, I had come across a couple of things that they may have been typos, but I think that they cannot be overlooked. One of the ones that I pointed out was the fact that for the law director, of course, it says that the law director will be appointed, but at the same time, it says it's an elected position. So in other words, the wording there is not consistent. The law director will be appointed. So it's an appointed position, not an elected position. I think that was one of them. And you're right. I had mentioned, I think, two of them briefly, but I think for me, the point was that I do believe it does merit actually going through to make sure that our charter and maybe this is, a time to appoint another, commission to look at it. But I do think that there are some other things that are in there that might need looking at, some things that, could be addressed, some opportunities for us to really make our charter more efficient, I guess, basically is what I was saying.
Mr. Chair, if
Go
I
ahead,
may. Mr. Mosby, I actually agree with you that the charter definitely needs to be reviewed, especially the law director portion of it. I agree with you 100%. However, there's something in the charter that says that that limits us to appointing a commission only once every 5 years or something like that. Also something that probably should be changed. But I think that with regard to our ability to appoint a commission to make those changes, until we actually change the charter, we're going to be limited, because I think that there was a charter review last year.
Ms. Underwood, I may be wrong, and I believe that Mr. Milanovac was on that commission, but I thought that the charter said that the charter had to be reviewed not less than once every 5 years.
It might. I think you have to be careful with that provision, because actually the power to create and amend a charter is actually in the Ohio Constitution. So you couldn't change that provision in a way that conflicted with the Ohio State Constitution. So it's just, essentially that language, from my memory, basically just regurgitates what the Ohio Constitution says. But I think Mr. Mosby's right. I think it's a not less than. I don't think it's a maximum.
Yeah,
I think it's a minimum, not a maximum.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm looking at section 14.06 now, and it does say not less than one each 5 years. And of course, the other option is, which has happened in the past, a petition. You find someone who wants to champion the cause to make an amendment, and they petition, get 10% of the folks that voted, et cetera, to put that on the ballot for a future vote. But
I mean, truthfully, sometimes that can be the easier way to do it. If someone does do that, it takes some effort, but I don't know. It's really not that many signatures. But
Probably even less signatures this time around, considering what we're going to go through for this election.
But I think there is a time limit, though. You have to look, like, when you can form the commission, like in a year, it has to, I think, be by a certain date, and then it has to wrap up within 6 months. So there's also the challenge of timing as well, because I think we might have missed, I think it has to be done by January or something.
December 1.
December 1.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't be able to do it until 2021, technically speaking.
Yeah, and I think that 10% provision, Ms. Zorb, if I'm going back, so my memory may not serve me correctly, but I thought that the 10% was 10% of the number of voters that voted in the last general election.
Okay, well, aside from potential future changes, I'll go ahead and take a note to bring the charter hard copy discussion back up at the council meeting. And then maybe we can all agree on a final, if anything needs to be changed, on a final version, and then we can make that available for copies. All right, next on the agenda was some discussion about editing some specific laws or ordinances, particularly found in the codified ordinances. One of them is about the building official. And in the agenda, you can see I referenced a couple of different codified ordinances in there, and then also the section 6.04 of the charter. And one of the things there just came up a couple of years back, I think, when XPEX became the building official organization, some other issues like that. And in one of those two, let me see if I have those. In one of those two codified ordinances, it does reference that the council makes the appointment or the selection or something for the building official. But then when we look at section 6.04 of the charter, it says that council has, in theory, has no authority over appointments and the staff or something like that. So I don't know if it's something there that we need to clean up or not. I know, Matt, you had mentioned before, I think in our previous meeting, that obviously any ordinance that's put out by the council through legislation can't supersede or override something that's in the charter. So maybe when this thing got put in there originally, I didn't write a date on it. When it got put in there originally, no one recognized, or maybe it was even before the charter. Let's see if I have it in here, the date on the building official thing. It looks like one revision took place in October of 2013. It was ordinance number 2, 2013. That passed in July. It looks like that's more about appeals from the decisions of the building official may be made to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Yeah, 604 of the charter says, neither council nor its committees or members shall direct or request the appointment of any person to or removal from office or employment. Now, maybe the building official doesn't really fall into that category, but it was brought up a few years back that council had no authority to decide on who the building official was based on that section of the charter.
Jim?
Yeah.
Well, they don't, but they do have the power to set the salaries. So council, under its Article 3 power, whether it's 306, has the power to set the number of employees and the compensation. So like, take Mr. Mosby, for instance. He's appointed by the mayor. He's an administrative appointee, but ultimately council would have to vote on his salary. Same thing with building official, even though we use a company as opposed to a person or any of our other administrative employees like Ms. Hall or anybody that The administration picks the identity of the person. We have the power of the purse strings.
Right, but again, if codified ordinance 1131.02 says the powers and duties of city council as they relate to this zoning code are as follows: approve the appointment of a building official or his or her designee to administer and enforce the provisions of these regulations. But then again, in section 604 of the charter, it says neither council nor its committees or members shall direct or request the appointment of any person to or removal from office or employment.
Oh,
So, so I think most of us realize the whole issue of setting staffing and salary requirements, but that right there almost seems clear. Again, unless we're not agreeing that the building official falls into that area of 6.04 of the charter, because they're contracted. I don't know.
right. No, I think it probably does. And I think if an ordinance contradicts the charter wins, right?
I think that it definitely conflicts, but
Yeah.
I don't think that council has the power to appoint the employees.
No, again, you got the supremacy of law. You've got the Ohio Constitution, you've got the ORC, you got our charter, you got our ordinances, and council rules are underneath that. So if you've got an ordinance that specifically contradicts express terms of the charter, then that ordinance would be invalid.
Mr. O'Shea, could you read that one more time? Because I thought I heard you say approves the appointment. So the mayor position could still appoint, but council has to approve. Is that what it meant?
Well, you are correct. It says approve the appointment of a building official. But again, when we go back to the charter, it says that we cannot, neither council nor its committees or members shall direct or request the appointment of any person to or removal from office or employment. So
Right, but it doesn't say approve. It says we can't say we want Bobby Smith to do this. So we can't recommend them, right?
Right, but by approving it, aren't we doing that?
No, we're saying we approve Bobby Smith that the mayor found. My question is, why is that different than the who is it, the city administrator, that the advice?
Right.
The
Well,
advice of council.
the difference,
I mean, it's similar.
I agree, but I think the difference is that line, that is directly from the charter, that we do have the authority, because that's in the charter. This is just an ordinance that what I think seems to conflict with the charter. If this statement was in the charter, that'd be different, but.
So is it your opinion that we should repeal that? I mean, does that end this whole conversation?
Well, I get hung up on inconsistencies, and if that's what makes things more consistent and stays legal and makes more sense, then we should probably consider taking this line out of that particular ordinance 1131.02.
So there's other good stuff
Mr.
in
Chair,
there.
Ms. Underwood.
before we go changing, because there are a lot of inconsistencies. I've had a lot of time on my hands over the last, I don't know how long, because I can't leave the house. So I think that what we probably should do is take a hard look at the charter, and I don't know how to do that. Maybe take a long, hard look at the charter, where it conflicts with the ordinances, how we want our city to be run, that kind of thing, before we just because you're right. To me, it conflicts because it very clearly says council cannot interfere with the city administrator. And interfere is a very vague, that can be interpreted in any number of ways. You find me 5 lawyers, I'll find you 5 ways to interpret the word interfere. Interfere could be, muting Mr. Mosby in this meeting. That could be construed as interfering. You know what I mean? So I just think that there are things like that that we need to just go back and fix and clean up. So that's just, I'll add that to the list. That wasn't on my list, but I'll add that to the list.
Mary Jo, yes, there are there's quite a few sections or paragraphs in that codified ordinance. And I mentioned before, they do talk about the ability to appeal to a zoning board of appeal, the Board of Zoning Appeals, et cetera. So I really think if we look at that particular ordinance closely, it's probably just that one particular sentence or section that needs to be addressed and or appealed. So it's just, and if most of you recall, when we first started this session with the committee, those were some of the things that I had recognized over the years being involved, and some things that I wanted to bring up through this committee as rules and public policy that we address. So Ms. Underwood, there are definitely a lot of things that need to be looked at. And I'm kind of like the things that I'm aware of. That's why I'm bringing them up with this committee. And then we can decide how we want to move forward. We can draft a piece of legislation to revise this particular ordinance and then run that past council when we're ready for that. So it's just, those are some of the things that I've experienced or recognized. And though there are many others, I'm sure this is one that, we can start talking about now and then hopefully clean up some of the things. Similarly to what we did at the previous meeting, we talked about 11301 or something, the posting places issue. That's one where we kind of decided, yes, we should probably repeal that ordinance. It was pre-charter, I believe it was 1999. We should probably just repeal that ordinance anyway. Not that it really matters, but it is inconsistent with the charter. And there's people like me who read through that stuff and then start picking it out and saying, Matt brought this up, hey, you guys are not following the law. And if it's out of there, it's one of those, I call it a low hanging fruit. If it's out of there, then we don't have to worry about that. And it might not be too difficult to start there. So.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Well, 2 things. One, I apologize. I'm bouncing back very quickly. I remember the second thing that I had told you about earlier today, and that was the term or the title. Actually, the 2 are related. The title for our finance person is actually finance. Right now, it's technically finance manager, and that is not. I don't believe that's the most appropriate term in the charter title. It should be a finance director. But that leads me to the second point, which you're discussing, because I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV, but when I was listening to you say that, one thing that came to my mind was, is it possible that what it was saying when it was talking about approving was in essence basically what you do with setting the positions and the salaries, right, with that particular ordinance? And as you said, council cannot get involved with the who, but it certainly can say this is the what. So the fact that it is saying it's approving the appointment of this title of building official, if it is interpreted that way, I don't see that as being conflicting with what the charter says. That's just my thought and interpretation on that. That yes, council would have to approve the appointment of a position or title of building official, And then it would be the administration's responsibility to fill that billing or fill that position.
Yeah. I understand. I hear what you're saying. I would have to think that others may believe that it's the actual person in the position. And like Ms. Underwood said, you get multiple lawyer, legal experts in there, and they're all going to interpret it probably a little differently. So again, it's just one of the things that I recognize that it's probably inconsistent, or if anything, the interpretation of what's written is inconsistent or unclear on how to interpret. So maybe that's what we need to fix, but.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I know that there are in the Ohio legislature, when they kind of propose new legislation, like at the state Senate, state House of Representatives, and even on the national level, they also have notes, like legislative notes that you can look at so that you can read to see actually what their intention was when they proposed a piece of legislation. So you can look at something and say, this is what I think it means. But then if you look at the legislative notes and see what their intentions were, you can kind of, it kind of narrows it down. So maybe we need to figure out a way as a council to include legislative notes or something, which kind of goes back to my original, we need to have like a place where we put all of this kind of thing so that people can go back and look and see like, okay, this is what their intentions were. So, just to alleviate this kind of conversation, it definitely needs to be fixed, but I think that there are some things we can do to kind of save ourselves some wheel spinning in the future.
Yeah, I think, Erica, the ability to maybe review minutes, although as most of us recognize, it's very difficult to do with our system and historically how that thing is how any of that has been recorded, etc. But we do not, at this point that I'm aware of, have any linking of minutes as they relate to particular pieces of legislation. So that might be something else that you can put on your list to champion that cause. Okay, well, again, these are a few things that I have recognized and think we should at least talk about, and we can bring them up again at a future meeting to decide if we really want to move forward. I would ask that the members of the committee maybe review, as noted on the agenda, review those particular sections and areas, and then maybe we can have a more thorough discussion about it, more in depth or something, and then decide if we want to submit a piece of legislation to revise that particular piece out of there, or we just leave it alone and we move forward. So, all right, the next one on the agenda is the campers, trailers, RVs, boats, etc. piece of legislation. And I did put some numbers in there that we could refer to in the future also. This was another one that I got involved in personally. I am no longer directly involved in it. That's past. But because I was involved in it, that's why I'm aware. We cannot have campers, trailers, boats parked in the front yard, even in a driveway. But then another one of the ordinances says we can't have a motor vehicle or recreational vehicle parked in the front yard except on the driveway. So when that came up in my particular case, because I had an RV in my driveway, then I got cited and then it went to court. And then I talked to he's not a prosecutor. Is he a prosecutor, Mr. Ritter? He's the prosecutor, right? Is that the right term? Anyway, when I talked to Mr. Ritter, ultimately they dismissed the case, but he also recognized that the inconsistencies in here obviously can cause some problems. So similarly, so I did actually go talk to Mr. Schran, Chief Schran, about these particular areas. And he did agree that there was some areas that he would like to see changed. And he did give me Mr. Ritter's email address. Unfortunately, I did not contact Mr. Ritter about any of this yet.
I'm sorry, who is Mr. Ritter?
He is our prosecutor, the city prosecutor. Okay. I think
The city prosecutor just basically just does mayor's court, right?
yeah, I
Correct.
guess that's all mayor.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So again, having experienced this directly, I saw that there were these inconsistencies, and I wanted to bring them up here to the Rules and Public Policy Committee for discussion and potential changes. Now, one of the things Mr. Ritter that I'm aware of, he did have some historical knowledge about these ordinances and the reason why they were created. So that's why I also want to reach out to him again and get a better understanding of the history and the importance or non-importance of this area. Now, Chief Schramm was telling me that one piece of it is they have to actually go out and write a ticket, and it's a misdemeanor 4 or 3. I don't know what some of that stuff is, but it's a bigger issue for the police. They actually have to go to court or something, and he would actually like to see it changed to where it's not that level of a citation. He would rather see it something where they can just pay the fine or something. I'm not real sure, but maybe you folks can take a look at the ordinances and the sections more closely, similar to the building official one. And then I'm going to reach out to Mr. Dieters, and then we can maybe talk about this again and see about getting it changed. Or maybe it doesn't make any sense at this point to get it changed and we just leave it alone.
I have
Mr.
a
Chair.
question about that. I'm sorry.
Ms. Underwood, go ahead.
So from my understanding from what you just said was the way that the ordinances are written right now is you can't have an RV or whatever this is parked in front of your house or in your driveway. So where are you supposed to put it?
Well, obviously, depending on the type of house that you have here in North Dodge Hill, you can park it in the driveway behind the house or be further than the front of the house or something. Again, it was a lot of technical issues in there that, to me, I consider them smoke and mirrors, but that's a bit different issue.
Okay, so on my street, on one side of the street, every house has an area like an apron behind the house. But on the other side of the street, none of the homes have an apron behind the house. So where would they put their RVs?
At a storage location.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mosby, go ahead.
Yeah, I did want to hopefully elucidate a little bit more. You are correct, but as I discussed this, and I had a very lengthy discussion with our building inspector, Mr. Knight. And first of all, it is important to note that when we talk about the driveway, what you said is true. The driveway as well as the grass all constitute the front yard. So anything that extends out beyond basically the front door of your house is considered your front yard, which means that even the driveway itself is considered the front yard if you are parking, if you're parking a recreational vehicle there. That becomes a real challenge, as I think both you and Ms. Underwood alluded to, if you do not have a house that has a driveway that extends into the back or a separate garage. For example, in my house, my garage is actually underneath, right? So you go into the driveway and then you go under, and many houses in North College Hill are like that. And if an owner has an RV, the only place that they would be able to park it, because they couldn't park it on the street, would be in that driveway. Now, according to our ordinance, that would be against the law. And that's the problem, because they don't have any place else to put it other than, as you said, in a storage facility. So that was one big part. Of course, the other kind of the technical part of that is, to your point, how far back then does it have to go if you happen to have a driveway, so that it's not violating? If it's on the side of the house, is that violating? Technically, it's not, because it's no longer in the front yard, as long as the entire vehicle is, behind the front door, basically, if you will. So yes, there are definitely some problems with the law. And I do believe that at the time that particular ordinance was written, it was probably, of course, us being more of a bedroom type community, you probably didn't have that many people who honestly had RVs. We have quite a few now who have RVs. And so it might be time, as you stated, to look at that law to see if there's a better way to be able to accommodate the residents so that they can park such vehicles on their property without being cited.
Yeah, now I know one of the issues goes back to just the idea of parking things in your grass. So in no sense, no type of vehicle, your car, anything can be parked in your grass. Then beyond that, again, was the issue that one ordinance uses words like trailer, boat, automobile, truck, I think. Those items cannot be parked in the front, even on the driveway.
Correct.
But the other ordinance says that a motor vehicle and or recreational vehicle, whatever that means, cannot be parked in the front yard except in the driveway, an asphalt or concrete driveway, or as you mentioned, in the garage, of course, but that goes without saying for the most part. So again, that's where I think the inconsistencies come in, with the fact that they talk about a trailer, a boat, a camper, that was the other one. And then separate from that is recreational vehicle. And I think that's where the inconsistencies come in, which, when I first bought mine, I had a council member tell me, oh, you're not allowed to have that parked in your driveway. And I said, oh no, right here's the ordinance, and it says a motor vehicle or recreational vehicle cannot be in the front yard except in the driveway. And so that's why I was comfortable even purchasing it and leaving it sit in my driveway. And then afterwards we were cited, and then that brought up the whole discussion and the whole research on the matter. So again, it's Ms. Underwood.
It's vague.
What's that, Ron?
It's vague. It's very very vague and confusing. I mean, I appreciate that. I like I said, I have looked at it, and I do think it needs reconsideration. But it is one of those things, Mr. Chair, if I may state it, if we're going to look at it, I really do agree with Ms. Underwood that, it's not looked at impulsively, but rather there ought to be, thorough deliberation on it so that we would be able to understand. I don't think there's any law that can be written that won't be misconstrued in one form or fashion. But I think if we can do our best to convey the spirit of what it is that we're trying to do, because we don't, obviously, I don't think as a city, we don't want to discourage any of our residents from, trying to buy, personal recreational vehicles or things like that. But we are saying that even if you do that, there should be an order about how we can, make sure that they're properly parked or placed. And as I said, I do think that is quite unfair to the residents who do not have, whose property is so small that they don't have a driveway that extends back into the backyard, and their driveway only goes to their garage door, which is at the front of their house. And technically, based on the International Building Code, that portion is considered the front yard.
Yeah, and I have family that lives in the city of Reading, and when you drive through there, they have campers and trailers and boats and all this stuff in the front of their house. And I would agree that aesthetically it is not pleasing. So I don't necessarily disagree that we need to just go in there and say you can do whatever. You know, after talking to Chief Schran, I originally went in to talk to Chief Schran with the idea that we need some major changes here. And then after talking to him, getting a little better understanding, then I realized, okay, what changes make the most sense? Because one of his concerns was if you do park an RV in your driveway, and we allow them in the driveway, in the front of the house, in the driveway though, there are some driveways in our city that are very close to the corner, and that would cause a visibility issue at the intersection. So, you know, then I was like, okay, well then do we really have to write this ordinance now to say, okay, well, if you're within 100 feet of an intersection and you can't do it. And so, you know, now it's just like, well, okay, I'm going to reach out to Mr. Ritter, get a feel for what he has to say, and then go from there. And again, I would just ask that, you know, this committee review those particular ordinance numbers or codified numbers and just get an understanding. And then we can talk about it some more and then decide if we want to move forward, or again, we just leave it alone, or we just try to tweak it a little bit so that the verbiage all makes some sense. So. All right, next thing on, it's almost 7:30. I know we got a late start, but as you see on the agenda, again, the rules of council. I don't think we want to get into those tonight. Again, I hate putting them off. I was hoping to hit some, again, that low hanging fruit, clean some things up and then move on. But, you know, we're going to have to start looking more closely at the current rules of council and then see about tweaking those and something that makes some sense in there. I know, Ms. Underwood, you had talked about maybe putting something in there that more clearly conveyed how committees submit their minutes, who they're submitted to and what timeframes, et cetera. Because again, we know that some people may take their minutes, sign them and turn them into the clerk right away. Some people hold on to them and eventually turn them in. I'm not even sure what the appropriate process is or was. So maybe that's something that needs to be added in there to more clearly define what the chair, vice chair, whomever has.
Mr. Chair, I actually have done some research on that.
Okay.
And there is a way that we can set up where we can submit all of those things in a digital format where they cannot be modified just by anybody going in to look at it, but anybody can just go in and look at it. So I think it's just a matter of setting up, you know, putting the infrastructure in place, and then we're going to have to try to figure out how we're going to go back and put, like, you know, previous, you know, worry about 2020 first, and then, you know, 2020, the year that doesn't exist, the dark year, and then go back to the other years and put those in there as well. I think that that's probably, you know, that would serve us. I don't know, you know, how we can do that, or, you know, who would do that, but I think that it definitely needs to happen. We need to make that happen.
Well, briefly, Ms. Underwood, you said you did some research. What was the consideration?
I think Google has the Google Docs. It's probably the easiest thing that we can use. If you need more storage, there's the ability to purchase more storage space. And then there's just a way for everyone, you know, if we all just go to a training so that we all understand how it works, and then we can just submit all of these things with a mouse click. It's very easy to do. You know, it's super, super easy. And I think that, you know, you create your document, create your agenda, submit it, and it has your digital signature on it. and it's there. You do your minutes as you're typing your minutes, you look at them and then you submit them. It's just as easy as a mouse click. So I really think that, we just need to put the infrastructure in place, figure out how to make it so that anybody can go in and look at it. And I know that there's a IT person in North College Hill. I was going to ask him some of those questions. At least I saw him from time to time in there.
So but again, your initial thought is that we utilize the Google system that we're already a part of.
Right.
Okay, which I don't disagree, and it's probably the easiest move for us. That would segue into the new business area on the agenda, where today when I sent the email, I included PDF versions of the agenda in the previous minutes. Is that what we really, there's an extra step in there where you create the document and you got to save it as a PDF, and then you have to upload from your desktop onto the email, et cetera. There's a few steps there. Or would we be comfortable just using the Google Docs version that would be shared? And I did this with Mr. Mosby with the current version of the charter, where I asked, I just shared a copy where he could only view it. He didn't have any way to comment officially, and he could not edit it. So that's
exactly right.
Do we want to use PDFs from our area? Obviously, whatever the clerk does, or whatever that ultimate goal is, to get them available to everyone, as one option. Or do we do a shared Google Doc that is shared with only view access? So I don't know if anyone else on the committee.
I think either one would be fine. Yeah, Jim, I think either one would be fine, because the idea is that nobody can go in and modify the minutes or the agenda. So either one, as long as, it's locked so that it's just kind of a read only thing, either the PDF or the read only, review only Google Doc is going to be fine. I guess it's just what you're more comfortable with. We just need basically to agree on where, the place and, how to access it. And then, if we can all agree just to sit down for like a 1 hour training, like this is how this works. This is how we're going to do this. And from this point forward, this is what we're going to do. I think that, that would be, I think we need to do that.
Okay. Mary Jo, Beth, Matt, anyone else, do you have, I'll just say, experience using Google Docs? Mary Dewald doesn't like using Google Docs, but I'm just saying for the rest of us, some people don't even know we have easy access to it. So Beth is shaking her head no. Mary
I
Jo?
have never used Google Docs before. Not saying that I can't, I just have not ever.
Hence the 1 hour training. Just very easy.
That's
very
what I'm
easy.
I'm not resistant. I'm saying I have no
Yes.
prior experience.
There we go. Just a 1 hour training. That's all we need.
That's what you think. What, Matt, do you use Google Docs? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we can always obviously do the PDF thing, and that's fine for now. I did know just like I said, when I sent this email, I had to do that. And then I thought, well, is that really what we want to do? And that's why I included it as new business today. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. If nobody has anything pressing that we need to talk about, or I see Mary Jo giving me the finger.
I'm saying you're number one.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Number one.
With the pointer finger, that is.
Yes. That's one second. So I know, Eric, I'm going to kind of piggyback on what you were saying. I know you had mentioned something about format for these documents. Does Google Docs is it a formatted document, or is it just like a blank sheet like Word?
It's just like a blank sheet. We would have to develop our own format,
Okay.
So, And, my idea for that, and I know we were talking about wrapping up, but my idea for that was just kind of like at the top, the name of the committee, when the committee meets, who the members are, who the other attendees are, and then, just something like that where it's consistent across all committees, so that, it's easily searchable.
Yeah. I just didn't know if we were going to go the format. Like
I think that's a good
everything.
idea.
Yeah, I do too.
It is probably something
Like
that we need to
uniformity.
move toward because as we've seen so many versions of agendas and minutes and all that, it's definitely challenging. And even pieces of legislation, when I had submitted some information to the city of Cincinnati for council's approval in creating legislation, that information runs through multiple processes, multiple steps in order to create a document that is basically identical in all forms of fashion, the thickness of the paper, the color of the paper, all kind of bureaucracy, but it keeps everything very consistent and very easy to follow and use. So, okay, if there's nothing else, anything else? Okay. can't
I
hear
have
you.
a question before you click out.
Yes.
Can we just stay in the meeting and just stop it and restart it or whatever? Or do we have to like log all the way out? What do we do right now?
I think Josh,
This meeting will conclude.
yeah, I think Josh
Okay.
will like stop this one, but he'll
Right.
do another full screen logo thing, and then we'll start the other one, I think is how it's going to work. All right,
Okay.
so officially,
Mr. Chair, just very quickly, I was just going to say, I would not mind working with Ms. Underwood on that proposal. I actually thought about that when I first came in, as far as putting together some consistent type of, I'll call it letterhead that each committee would have. But I would be happy to work with her on that if she's open to it.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's it, sir.
my clock over here says 7:40 p.m. and we'll go ahead and conclude this meeting. And
Mr.
then,
O'Shea, can we just, before we cut out, I saw Josh unmuted for a second, if he wanted to give us direction instead of us speculating.
Yeah, I was just gonna, thank you. I was just gonna say, what I've been doing for committee meetings, what we've all been doing for committee meetings is just throwing the full screen up. You guys take however much time you need, but then all the committee meetings will just be on this same video for the public viewing, if that makes sense.
Josh, I think the question is, we don't leave, you just kind of,
Yes, ma'am.
Make us go
Yeah,
away.
you guys
We do.
stay here. You guys, no, sorry. You guys
We
stay
stay
here. I'll just throw up the full screen just like at the beginning of meetings.
all right,
And you guys, you guys want to let me know when you want to start the next one?
good enough. Thank
okay,
you.
Josh. Josh,
Yes, sir.
I was wanting to, earlier, I wanted to share a document, and it looks like you guys have us disabled where we cannot share our screens.
I can go ahead and make you a co-host.
Oh, that's what it takes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, I don't need to now because we're going to go ahead and conclude this meeting, but probably in the future, at least the chair or whoever's presiding over the meeting should be a co-host immediately. And then I guess we could always request, hey, can someone else be a co-host if they wanted to share their screen?
Of course, yes.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the Rules and Public Policy Committee. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Erica,
Yes.
it looks like
Oh.
your meeting minutes are not in Google Docs.
They are not. I want us to just figure out, because I have everything in one place. All I have to do is like literally drag and click it and put it there. I just, I think it'll be easy for us to do. We just need to do it. And it won't take long, at least for 2020. I don't know, what's going to be involved for 2019 and before that, especially considering like Larry's gone, and I don't know like what he has, or if we have like his hard copies or what. So but at least we could get started with the process.
I was just a little surprised to see that the document you used is not even a Google Docs. Have you used Google Docs though?
I have not, but my son assures me that it's very easy to use. So that's why I suggested it. And that's why I suggested the 1-hour training, because he assures me, he's like, Mom, you go to the training, you can do it. I'm like, okay, well, I can do it. I'll go to the training.
Yeah, most of their products, like the spreadsheet and the word processor and all that, are very similar to the Microsoft version. There are some limitations. There's definitely some differences. So if you're used to Microsoft, you might get a little frustrated with some of the features that may be missing. But that's the only thing I use now is the Google Sheets and Google Docs and some of their other stuff.
Okay.
And I guess, Erica, I don't know if you want to wait for anybody else, but you might want to, whenever you're ready, you might want to tell Josh, okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, because I think he's got to clear that screen.
Oh, okay. Well, Josh, if you're there and you can hear me, we're ready to get started.
Sounds good. Just wait for this to come down.
Okay, looks like everybody's here. MJ, Matt, Novak, Jill, Shay, Bethany. Okay, so the gang's all here. 1, 2, 4, 5. So I sent minutes in a second email to everybody. Did you all get that? I'm sorry, I didn't attach it to the first one. And does anybody have any corrections or anything to the minutes?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a question.
Can
Not
you just
nec-
call me Erica, because that's going to confuse me. I was like, huh?
Yes. Yes. Hi, Erica. I just have a question about, I was not in attendance at that meeting.
Okay.
So you have, for number 3, you have streets and highways. Was that not discussed, or I don't see anything?
No, it wasn't. Most of the meeting actually was spent discussing the 2 bars, and actually Chief Shrand had a whole PowerPoint. It was him and the other guy. I don't remember his name. I don't have the minutes in front of me, but
Petroselli, according
yeah.
to the minutes.
Yeah, that was what most of the meeting was about.
Okay, then I guess my follow-up to that would be, is it possible for me to get a copy of, it says the chief had a PowerPoint. Can I get a copy of that? Should I ask it from him, or do you
No,
have it
I
electronically?
Actually, I don't have it electronically. I do have a hard copy that I can give to you, which is, and it would be easy if I could put it in the Google Docs, probably. But yes, the answer to your question is,
Oh, you're going to test
yes.
me already. I got it.
I have, so I can give that to you. And there's also another report that he had attached that I was going to give to everyone as well. So yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, great. We lost all of our city administration, but that's okay. maybe that's good. The minutes are okay with everybody? Okay, great. Number 3 is streets and highways. And the only thing that I have to say about that is I'm just curious as to, do we have a list anywhere of all of the streets in North College Hill? Just kind of a list. And I'd be curious about that, as well as a list of all of the projects that are happening in North College Hill. I obviously can ask Mr. Mosby for that. I'm just wondering if something like that already exists.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so what I will do is I will follow up with Mr. Mosby about a list of all the streets and a list of all the projects and what their status is, how much it's costing, blah, blah, blah. Does anybody have any questions or any comments about that?
Erica, I do.
Okay,
Sorry, I guess I'm gonna be the problem child tonight.
you're not at all. I think that's helpful. Okay,
My, and I don't know if this is the right committee for this, but since you brought up streets and highways, I was wondering if Public Works is going to start initiating the street cleaning again, the street sweeping again, because
Okay.
I think it's probably about time for that.
we can ask about that. That's a great question. All right. Anything else?
I have something.
Okay,
Our sewers in the city, the ones I walk by, are full of garbage. I've seen street sweepers in other cities that have like vacuums on them where they can put them in the sewer and suck the crap out. I want to see if we can find a way to be able to do something like that.
absolutely. Okay, I will
Sure.
follow up about that as
Sure.
well.
Erica,
Yes.
I want to throw my,
No, go ahead.
I want to throw some
taking notes.
cautionary tale out there.
Uh,
I can tell you that I can't think of why is his name. All I can think is Marty, Mr. Cole.
Cool.
I want to say either last year or the year before requested the purchase of a street sweeper with that
Okay.
suction vacuum thing. And at the time, the city could not afford that. And that's why we went with the contract with Coleraine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Colerane's a piece of equipment has that capability or not.
okay,
Now, Erica,
yes.
if I'm not mistaken, in the past, one of the reasons that Mr. Cole asked to get a new piece of equipment was because of the amount of time it takes to do the street sweeping, because apparently one or two of the folks from Public Works goes with the street sweeper, pulls the grates off of the inlets and cleans them out. I don't know how thorough they do that, if they always do that, I'm not sure, but I think that was supposed to be done, but I'm not sure.
I've never seen that.
Me either, and it's definitely something. I will definitely ask about it. Okay, yeah, it's happening. And anything else that anybody else can think of?
As it relates to the list of streets, a while back, I created a map of the city of North College Hill. We used to have one, I think, that the city had available, but I don't know when's the last time anything had ever been updated. And I had created one also. I could potentially make that available to share, specifically if you're interested in seeing the map. but
I've looked at that map that was attached to that document that you sent all of us.
oh, no, it's not that one.
Okay, yeah, I did look at that, but I was just kind of like, there should be like a list, like, you know what I mean? Even alphabetical by area, whatever, a list of all of the streets so that we can say, so that we know like what's going on. And I mean, because how do we know? We're supposed to, I mean, if it's checks and balances that we're supposed to be doing here, how do we know that we're getting what we're paying for? How do we know that stuff is getting done throughout the city if we're not paying attention, if we're not watching?
Because we have a city administrator who takes care of all that for us.
Checks and balances.
Erica, what are you just looking for a list of all the streets alphabetically? Do you want them by quadrant? Do you have a
It doesn't matter.
preference?
It would be really great, but if I could have them both ways, but you know, whatever way I can get them, that's fine. Before I actually go, and because I can do it myself. I just thought that if one already exists, I didn't want to recreate the wheel.
Didn't we have a map when we were campaigning?
It's a different issue.
Everybody, you can just use Google Maps. I mean,
But that doesn't give you a list.
well, no, it doesn't give you a list, but I mean, print it out in sections or something like that if needs be.
Yeah, that's what I was planning on doing, but you know, I was just hoping that one already existed. But that's, I mean, it's good. I'll do that.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any concerns about the streets and highways other than that? I do have a question for you guys. Who's responsible for that horrible intersection between North College Hill and Mount Healthy, right by Ronald
Mount
Reagan
Healthy.
Highway?
Underneath the trestle,
Yeah.
it's Mount Healthy's. I did notice construction going on through downtown Mount Healthy. It would look like they were digging up the street. I don't know if that's because there is a road project by ODOT that is going to come down Hamilton Avenue because it's a state route. I don't know if that was the beginning of that in Mount Healthy, or if Mount Healthy was doing their own road construction. I don't know. I would
Okay.
doubt if they knew that ODOT was coming through that they would put their own dollars into it.
Okay.
I mean, why would you?
There's probably a cost sharing involved there because technically ODOT in a city does not maintain the street in the city. They only maintain the streets in unimproved corporations. Is that it's not the word, it's shoot, what's the word I'm looking for? Unincorporated areas like townships.
Okay. All right.
Erica, to back you up though, I do have one more thing about the streets. At one time, I can't remember if it was Mr. Cole's initiative or Mrs. Long's initiative, but at one time we were working on getting a lot of, I don't know if you've noticed, but when you drive through North College Hill, if you know where you're going, you don't look, but a lot of the street signs are missing. There's just no street sign there at all. So when you don't know where you're going, there's no sign to help you. And granted, we're only 1.8 square miles. I get it. It's hard to get lost, but if you don't know where you're going, there's no sign to direct you.
Aren't
Okay.
they in the process though of, wasn't that part of what they call that, the sign program or something like that?
I don't remember. I know there was something going on with street signs. I don't recall the details. That's where I am.
I will definitely follow up on that. I have noticed that all of the street signs in North College Hill appear to be blue. Other than that, Mary Jo, I'm one of those people who get lost if I don't see street signs. So that's me. Okay. Anybody else with as far as the streets and highways? Okay, so I want to go to number 4, the fire levy. I had briefly talked to Chief Fells, and I know that there was some kind of joint levy thing that failed miserably on the ballot before. But I think that we need to figure out from Chief Fells what the fire department needs. I know that there was, the mayor had mentioned starting some kind of something about trying to come up with creative ways to fund the fire department. But I think the easiest way would be just to put a fire levy on the ballot just for the city of North College Hill. I don't know how to do that. I just think that that's something we should do, and want to know what all of your thoughts are. Crickets.
I'll
Bueller?
jump in. I'll jump
Anytime you
in.
talk about levies, it's crickets, right? Or a spirited conversation.
Yes.
I am not opposed to a reasonable tax levy. To at least talking about a reasonable tax levy.
Okay. Just for North College Hill. I don't want any
Yes.
joint, nothing. I'm not,
I'm with you.
okay. Okay, I'm gonna need everybody to say something. Say, I agree, I disagree.
I agree.
Obviously, we need to fund the fire department, but I guess my concern is why we need to do a levy to fund them.
When I briefly talked to Chief Fells about our fire department, he was saying that they're all part-time, I think, and they all work with another, so they all work with the city of Cincinnati. So in theory, if something happens, and you know, they made, you know, COVID-19, you know, they made it sound like the plague, but whatever. And it might be the plague, I don't know. You know, something, you know, they open everything back up and then all of a sudden, you know, people get sick and everything comes crashing down and falling apart. I don't want our firefighters to say, you know, I make more money with Cincinnati, so I'm not going to work in North College Hill. And, you know, you guys are just, you know, so sad, you know, too bad, so sad. I just want at least to have, you know, some full-time firefighters or some, I don't know what we can do or what, I don't know. I think that we need to have the conversation, and I think that we need to figure out like what we need to do to make sure that, you know, we're okay and we're covered if something happens in North College Hill.
I thought we had 3 full-time. Do we not?
I am, when I talked to him, he said that everybody was part-time or they all worked at another agency. I might be mistaken about that, but that was my understanding of it. And obviously I'll follow up with him on that.
I thought that was part of the first levy that got, the first fire levy that was passed. That was part of the reasoning, the justification was to have 3 full-time firefighters.
I have not heard.
At one point we did. Sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
That's all right. I keep interrupting. I have not heard if any of them have moved on or if they are still on our fire department or not. Maybe that's the issue that Eric is referring to. Yes, we had 3, and maybe for whatever reason they're no longer there. And at this point, we don't have 3 full time. But I don't know. I have not heard.
Whoa!
Oh.
Uh-oh.
That
Not
sounds
me.
like a big dog.
Okay. All right, so I'll follow up with Fells about that. Anything else? Anybody else? Any other concerns about that?
Erica, if you're going to follow up with Chief Fells, I would almost ask him if he had gosh, I hate to say this, if he has a number in mind for what a decent levy to sustain him would be.
Okay.
13.9, I think.
No, that was the joint. That was the sustained 10 firefighters.
No, if you remember, Ms. Zorb, he came back into a council meeting and we asked him the same thing. And he said, if you want what you were going to get, it was 13.9. If you don't want the best, I don't know, 3, 4, we'll just keep putting the Band-Aid on it.
We'll talk to him about it. We'll have him come to a committee meeting or a special meeting or something, so we can have a conversation with him about it. And you know, we'll haggle and argue and fight, and we'll figure out what the best thing to do is. Because obviously, if I call 911, I want somebody to show up at my house. That's, you know, maybe selfish, but I'm sure that all my neighbors want the same thing. So that's my concern. So I just want us to be covered here, because I know that if I had 2 jobs and one job paid me more than the other, then the one that paid me the most is where I'm going to be first. That's going to be my priority. And I just want somebody to make North College Hill their priority.
There's also that concern of, I mean, it's tough. Levies are tough. If they're too
Yeah.
high, they won't pass. If they're too low, you're going to need to ask for more money in 3 years.
Right.
And people, then they won't pass because
Right.
people
Because they'll be like,
for
didn't
a
you
levy
just
3
ask?
years ago or 4 years ago. So
Yeah.
it's like you got to find that really small, fine line of not asking for too much where it won't pass, but not asking for too little where you have to ask again.
Yeah, I agree with you. But I think that it, you know, just, I think most people, you know, like the firefighters. That helps. And we're not trying to, you know, bundle a bunch of neighborhoods together. I think that helps as well.
It's hard to know because I think people were turned off by the joint aspect of it. They felt like
Yeah.
they're going to be paying for someone else's service. So I don't know. I think we'll have to put out some feelers somehow, maybe at the same time. I mean, we can ask Mr. Fells what he thinks, but ultimately what's going to ultimately matter is what the voters think. And, you know, we're going to have to find a number that they can swallow and that we can pass, because it costs money to put levies on the ballot too. So it's, if we're going to do this again, we got to maybe do a little bit more homework and just see where people's minds are, like what they feel about money wise without the joint. So, because obviously the joint part's not happening this time. There's the doggy. There he is.
Probably another thing to take into consideration is the unemployment numbers right now. And do we want to try to ask people to pay higher taxes when unemployment is skyrocketing? Maybe they drop by November. I don't know.
But it's an income. I mean, well, I mean, it's a property tax. But I mean, if the property tax is gonna, I don't know. I mean, it's the property values might sag too. And I think at least in the meantime, the one thing to remember is that unless you make more than $1,000 a week, unemployment does have an extra $600 a week. So it's 100% payout up to $1,000 a week. I don't know how long it's going to last, but I think it's at least until September, maybe that's set. So hopefully a lot of people are going to be going back to work within several months. but the unemployment numbers, they sound terrible, and they are, but at least the compensation benefit amount is going to be commensurate with what people were making before they were furloughed or laid off.
Makes sense. Okay, look at us moving right along. I think we're gonna come to the wall on number 6, but anyway, number 5. So that police software that they need to generate reports, the last time I asked about it, it was just kind of like, I don't know, it disappeared, but I really think that that's important for us to know what's going on. I've seen the reports in the city of Cincinnati. When I asked Chief Schrand about it, he said that the software crashed and something, they lost some data, something, we're working on it, something. I I just want us, we've got to be able to find, I mean, I'm finding it really difficult to believe that we cannot, as a city, find I think he said it costs $10,000. We can't find $10,000 to buy the software so he could tell us what's going on. You're shaking
Hey,
your head, Jim.
can he use Google Docs?
I don't care if he uses a yellow notepad and writes down what they're doing on the yellow notepad. I just want them to tell us what's going on. I know the software makes it easier for them to do, but it can be done without the software. The software didn't always exist.
I love how
Agreed.
Elizabeth just has animals Zoom bombing us the whole meeting.
That was my big fatty that was just there. My big fat cat. I have that one too.
Okay,
Mom,
so
Sweetie looks pregnant.
Ruh-roh.
Well, someone just body shamed your cat. We heard that.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
So police software, what are we, I mean, am I just like running on the hamster wheel here? What's going on?
What are they using now? I thought that was just historical stuff that they lost. And it wasn't just North College Hill. It was a lot of, I believe City of Cincinnati was in that same bucket with us.
Yeah, I
But
think so.
they're still doing their reports though. So I don't know how it is that they're still doing their reports. And I know they are because, I go to, some of those community meetings just, because I'm nosy. Well, not nosy. I'm just, involved. Yes, involved. I'll call it that. So it's just seems to me to be just an important thing for us to have.
I do not disagree with
Are
you.
waving because Mr. Miller Novak.
I'm just waving to her kid. I got nothing intelligent to say.
Okay. Hi, Mayor.
Guys, before it kept going in and out, so I had to go out the last time. So now I'm trying. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself. I'm sorry. If I can figure out how to mute myself. Oh gosh. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
There it is. Okay.
So, okay, let me ask you guys this. You guys are not, does anybody have any objections? I'm not gonna leave it alone. I'm just gonna keep going and going until I have a report in my hand.
Objections to what?
Yeah, I
To
don't
me,
think that
trying to get this, to me, I'm gonna keep asking about it.
I certainly don't object to that. I would be curious to know what they're using right now then.
Nothing. That's what I'm told, nothing.
Well, they got to be writing up their information. What, are they not logging it anywhere?
No, my understanding is they're writing reports, but I don't know that there's like an easy searchable database that compiles numbers and statistics, where the
And a
software
spreadsheet
before would have certain information that would like auto generate statistics, where now they would have to do it, 1979 style or something like that.
Open the file cabinet kind of thing and thumb through the papers? Is that
Yeah.
what they're doing now?
Yeah. But
You know, this is where I am with it, because, when we were doing all these committees at the very beginning of all of this, I actually was trying to just help with other committees, not actually be the chair of a committee, because I know myself. But I think the software would be easier than me sending a public records request to them once a month for copies of all of their reports. But I'll do that. It's fine. One way or another, I want to see it. It's all good.
Erica, you kind of went to go back. I think you said something to me about laughing or shaking my head or something, that finding the $10,000. So I think if you consider what we did with the appropriations, I mean, we cut things down about as far as they can go. Now, whether we think there's money somewhere that they can buy the software, or we're just saying, look, there's no money and you need to come up with another way to log the data and to be able to generate reports. I mean, I don't think we're going to have the money anytime soon. So the issue then becomes conveying to Mr. Mosby and the mayor the importance of being able to generate reports based on the runs or whatever. I'm not exactly sure what report you're looking for, but yeah, I don't think there's going to be any money. I don't think there's $10,000 there unless he wants to give up some of his ammo money or riot gear or what other stuff that he spent money on. I don't know, and maybe you can find it there.
Okay. Sorry, I'm taking notes with my pen. I'm normally typing, but I feel like I might, I don't know, something might happen if I can't see the screen. No objections.
You got a second monitor?
Not yet. I'm gonna do that. I don't have one yet.
It's so helpful.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so number 6 is Mayor's Court. I'm not sure what the status of our Mayor's Court is, and I don't even know if that falls under public safety or if we even have any say-so about that. I have no clue. I just know that Mayor's Courts have been suspended per the Ohio Supreme Court. And I'm just wondering, are we still paying the magistrate and the prosecutor and clerks? Are they all still getting paid even though there's no Mayor's Court and there hasn't been for the last 2 months? Anybody know?
Haven't heard a thing. You might want to talk to finance folks.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the prosecutor gets paid hour. I want to say he gets paid hourly
Per
or by
hour.
case or something like that.
Yeah, he does. And then I believe the magistrate is still getting paid.
I would think the clerk's still getting paid also because there's still
Why?
clerking to be done. There's
All 5, are there really 5 clerks in there?
There is one clerk. There's one mayor's clerk. Can you guys hear me?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, there's one mayor's clerk. She is still getting paid because you still have people coming in, making payments to her. And they're still, I guess, sending out stuff for the different dockets or what have you. that needs to go out. I'm sorry, I had to come outside. They were making too much noise. For there's still things to go on and she has to process, so she's still getting paid.
Yeah, I mean, with the mayor's court, like all fines go get paid directly to us, number one, and then number two, I think we even have like some quasi probation, don't we? That technically, like, let's say it's a wet reckless or something that I think you have to pay your fines and you're on like our quasi probation and stuff like that. So I think that's probably what Tracy's talking about, that she's still managing.
Okay.
So as
Alrighty.
far as I know, the magistrate is still getting paid. Mary Jo is correct. The attorney, I think, does get paid per the cases, and I think it's like an hourly rate. I thought it was from something I read. I could be confusing something else.
Tracy, that sounds very familiar to me. I questioned it one other time when I was the chair of finance, and I was told that.
I want to say something like, please, I hope I'm wrong. I want to say I read something like $100 or something, either per case or per hour or per. It was something, I can't remember which one it was.
It might even be, I think when I found out what it was, I think I put it on the salary ordinance. So a couple years ago, it would have been on the salary ordinance.
I had to click out to go look at it.
Yeah, I don't know that do we need an exact number right now? Is that what you're looking for, Erica? An exact number?
I was just kind of wondering. I was wondering about it because of just going to those meetings, those where they talk about all of the different jurisdictions and what they're doing, and and where they're talking about they're concerned that they're going to run out of money. And I know Hamilton County has furloughed quite a few people. I don't think we've furloughed anybody. I don't know. I hadn't heard. So I was just wondering, like, if there's no mayor's court, why we would pay the magistrate. But, I was just kind of wondering about that. I don't want us to run out of money because
I can surely look into that. There's only right now one person who we're not paying besides the clerks that Chief Schran laid off. But there's one other position that's not getting paid right now.
Okay.
And
are you at liberty to let us know what that position is?
I mean, I can. I was going to tell y'all at the next meeting, but it's recreation, Mr. Moore. We don't have anything right now, so we're not paying that position right now.
I know that there's money with Hamilton County that they have that they receive from the federal government to pass out to the local jurisdictions. I don't know how that works. I was gonna kind of bring that up at the next council meeting. I feel like we need to.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we need to get in on that early because I know Sharonville is a favorite of theirs, but we need to make North College Hill like a favorite. We need to get right. We need to get in where on some of that money while it's still there. I just that's why I was just kind of asking the questions. I just don't want them to ask us a question that causes some kind of crazy, or an answer where they're like, well, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, I had a discussion about that money today, and actually I'm going to talk to Mr. Mosby tomorrow about what funds and what each department has spent to see if we can in fact get any of that money from Hamilton County. I understand they're not releasing any of it, but I don't know if that's true or not. But I do know that Springdale, the Sharonville area does get a lot because of that convention center.
Right.
I did bring that up at the last finance meeting when Ms. Hall was on there. So that if it wasn't already on her radar, it would have hopefully gotten there.
Yeah, but I'll follow up tomorrow.
Okay. That's all I had about Mayor's Court. Does anybody else have anything about Mayor's Court? Oh, look, we're chugging right along here. Okay, what about old business? Going once, going twice? Okay, no old business. And new business? So for new, okay, go ahead, Mr. Jim, Mr. O'Shea.
Mr. Jim O'Shea. A couple issues, since they are safety related. The sidewalks, obviously there are we've been taking quite a few walks around the neighborhood now, socially distancing appropriately, might I add. Having said that, we find many sidewalks that present trip hazards. So I know in the past there was some concern about, trying to get the sidewalks fixed. And then also another safety issue is when you are walking along the sidewalks and or jogging, for those who do, many times there are cars in driveways that are parking across the sidewalk, and you're forced to either walk out into the street to get around them, or obviously to cut through their private property. And depending on how close two cars are parked together in the driveway, there's no option but to go out into the street. So it's just something I think both of those issues need to be addressed. And it's even more concerning, if you're pushing a young child, baby in a stroller, and you have to take a stroller out in the street. So, and I do see some folks walking around pushing strollers, but it is something that we've experienced personally, just trying, walking around town. And so the bad sidewalks that need to be fixed, and then getting the folks that are blocking the sidewalks with their vehicles, those need to be considered, looked at by the police or whomever needs to look at that.
Okay. Right, sounds like a plan. We'll follow up on that. Anybody else has any new business? I have new business. If nobody else does. Matt, are you invisible, or you have your invisibility cloak going on, or are you just?
What do you got? What's your new business?
So the law director, I think that we need to figure out like what our expectations are, and then just kind of sit down and meet with him about that and figure out what we need to do to make sure that we have the law director that we need. I think that's what we need to do.
Erica?
Yes.
Though I totally agree, I'm not sure this committee is the appropriate place to discuss it. That's all.
Okay, well, I can put it on, I didn't want to put it on the entire floor of council, but I did want to bring it up. I just think that it's maybe as simple as a conversation. Maybe we just schedule a meeting with him, and we have a list, like, this is what we want, and he says, well, this is what you need, and we figure that out.
There is the option of going into an executive session from a committee meeting also, if that is something you would like to do.
I think the part of the issue is, I mean, it might be more of a committee of the whole thing. I don't know that there's a specific committee
Oh, okay.
to apply to, but I mean, my guess is there's going to be financial consequence to that. So at least at some point, you know, I mean, if we're asking, I know part of the criticism's always been he doesn't come to every meeting, but that might pack a few more dollars in terms of what the firm would want. So, I mean,
Yeah, but I think that they send us bills every year. They send us bills anyway for if they go beyond a certain thing, right? So
Mhm.
instead of that, maybe, maybe we can, because if I actually read that, some of that stuff that I was emailed, all those little, all those little lines and everything. And like, I know in 2018, we paid a considerable amount of money to the firm. And it seems to me like it would just be easier if we say, this is what we need, and we just pay him full time or put whatever we need to do. And that way we're not paying all that extra money. Because I know that we don't pay it every year. I get that because we didn't do it and it didn't happen in 2019, but I just, I can't imagine. It's just,
There were lawsuits in 2018, which made it a little bit more the pay, I guess, because he had to do extra work. We had a couple lawsuits. Then we could have had one that carried over, or not a lawsuit, but a settlement in 2019. But I mean, I hear what you're saying. So,
so it sounds like we need to have a committee of the whole. Is that what you said, Jim? Matt?
I think Matt said that, but
Matt.
I would agree. Since there is no specific committee, we probably need a committee of the whole. We could enter into executive session and then more openly discuss the issues.
Okay, so
I don't know that we could go in executive session. Just
if you talk about his salary, is that
Salary?
when they will have to go in?
he's not an employee.
he is an employee.
Yeah, he's in our charter. He's appointed.
Is
He's
he
an employee.
W-2 though?
Yep, I
We-
talked to him about that. Yep,
Okay.
I believe we pay his retirement too. I mean, we play
Yeah.
OPERS and stuff like that for him.
right. So we need to, I just think we need to like get on the same page with it and just, that way we're not, because I'm not like, I just want us all to be on the same page. I think if we can get on the same page and fix it, and I think we can fix it.
Well, I don't know if officially we have any kind of scope of work or anything, do we?
Well, I think that we can create a scope of work.
But again, I'm
Right.
saying now, I don't think there's anything
No,
like that exists.
there's nothing. You're right. There's nothing. And every time I ask the question, everybody just keeps telling me there was a deal. We need something. We need something.
Does anybody have a copy of the 2010 charter that, because in the 2006, he was elected. It was an
Right.
elected position. The 2010 is appointed.
Became appointed, right?
It's appointed, but it's still like most law directors of most government entities are appointed. And, governments put out RFPs and they get proposals from firms and some firms choose like blended rates and some have like caps and things like that. I mean, like for Coleraine, for instance, I think they pay 120 a year, 120,000. I know a couple other government entities that pay around 90 and things like that. So I've seen a pretty good amount of law director contracts with various entities, and it's they can be smaller, and they can be big. It depends what you want and how much you use. again, I've seen blended rates, which is kind of like what we have. I think we have some around a $38,000 or $42,000 contract, but if under certain extenuating circumstances like litigation or things like that, it can be more. I've seen some law director contracts have caps where the government just pays $120,000 a year and get what they get. So that's why it's a conversation, and part of it is what we want to have a law director substantively, and then the other part of it's financial. I mean, Erica, we're both attorneys. I mean, if you come in my office and say, I need you to do this kind of work for my business, I mean, I can try to give someone an estimate of how much that costs, but if we want that much out of them, it's going to cost about that much. If we want that much out of them, it's going to cost that much. So that's the conversation has to be had.
Well, I at least would like for us to write down what we want or what we feel like we need, and then have the conversation with them. And if, we can't do it, we can't do it. But I think that at the very least, we need to have the conversation. We need to talk to them about it. That's what I would like to do.
Oh, okay. So we should,
All right.
but I think we should do it as a committee of the whole, because it's not
Committee
really
of the whole.
a safety thing.
Okay, so how do I do that? Since you just brought that up, do I just,
Bring it up at a regular council meeting and just
okay,
ask you could do it under new business or something, and just bring it up and make a motion to have a committee of the whole meeting to discuss legal services.
okay,
And you want him present, correct?
yes.
Initially,
Or is this going to be your organizational meeting?
Yeah, maybe not initially, because we need to talk about what we want. So maybe not initially, but obviously at some point we're gonna need to have him present. I mean, because are we paying him enough to come to meetings already, or no? Or I don't even know what. All I know is that he's an employee and what he makes. I don't know anything else, because there's nothing else there.
I know if it gets much darker, I'm going to need one of those voice changers.
Okay, well, that's all I had. Does anybody else have anything else?
Erica, as a side note, I just sent you an email with those salaries that I think you're looking for.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if nobody has anything else, I think that's it. Thank you guys very much for coming, and I will generate the minutes, and I may even try to do it in Google Docs. How about that? And I'll make sure everybody gets a copy.
Awesome.
all right.
Josh,
I'll try to figure out how to read it.
We're all good, Josh.
Good night, all.